Welcome to the Vetiver Vibes podcast. We're your hosts, Nikki, Rachel, and Rhonda, certified clinical aromatherapists coming to you from Ontario, Canada, and on the internet everywhere.
This episode is brought to you by Essentria, a leading online school for aromatherapy. Essentria is your go-to source for clinical aromatherapy certification programs that are recognized by NAHA and the Canadian Federation of Aromatherapists.
If you want to learn more about Aroma Massage course, check out their website, www.schoolofessentria.com. We're excited that you've given your time to be here with us, knowing you'll get the best essential oil scoop. Hello, welcome to this episode of Vetiver Vibes. Today, we are very happy to be interviewing Mark Webb on today's episode. Mark is also known as the Aroma Science Guy. He holds a bachelor's degree in science, majoring in biochemistry, plant physiology, and IT. He also has diplomas in aromatherapy, including aromatic and herbal medicine, massage, and I believe Reiki also.
Yeah.
He is the author of Bush Scents, Australian Essential Oils and Aromatic Compounds, which we hope will have a second edition soon, maybe. And Mark is extremely passionate about the aromatic plants of Australia and how they can be better used within the aromatic world. We're very excited to have you here with us today to talk about CO2s and aromatherapy in general.
Thanks, Nick. That was a lovely intro. Thank you. So who is the Aroma Science Guy? Well, I like pictures mean 1,000 words. And so as a formulation chemist, aside from, I do a lot of work in the aromatic world, but I also do a lot of work in the food and beverage world. I work in extraction technology. I'm also a cosmetic chemist, so I do a lot of work in topical product development, perfumery. It's a wide gamut of stuff outside of the normal aromatherapy area. I'm also an extraction specialist, so I spend a fair bit of time working in the CO2 world and other types of extracts, water-based extracts, herbal extracts, steam distillation, farming and that sort of thing. So yeah, it keeps me busy. Up until COVID, I was spending a lot of time traveling around the world teaching classes. America, Canada, Malaysia, Singapore, a whole pile of places. So I love teaching. I love sharing information about the aromatic world. I like sort of enthralling people. And we might just stop here for a second. If we look at the slide and take a look here, there's a couple of ladies that some of you may recognise,
yes,
partaking of a particular delicious beverage that I helped to create, which contains aromatics, amongst other things.
It was so good. Rachel, Rhonda, and I, it was so delicious.
For those of you that can't see what we're talking about, it's an energy chai elixir that I made for a company. It's rich in CO2 extracts plus guarana and ginseng, and it gives focus and clarity was the brief, and it certainly does that. Anyway, moving on. So when we look at the CO2 world, many people don't realize that CO2 extraction was developed by people in Russia back in the 1950s. And so, and moving into the 60s, that they produced liquid CO2 extraction plants, predominantly for the food and flavoring industry. So Russia is uniquely different from most other parts of the world in that they don't use hydrocarbon extracts or oleoresins in their food industry. They only use liquid CO2 extracts. So they've had a long history of doing extraction since the 1950s onwards. And even today, there are still factories set up that are producing these extracts. So it's a uniquely different thing. How I found out about this was I met a Russian guy by the name of Alexei about 25 years ago. And Alexei introduced me to these CO2 liquid extracts. And I was blown away by the incredible flavor and scent profiling. It was quite amazing, frankly. When we move on, though, when we go to the 1970s in America, Americans took the Russian technology via the UK, as scientists often do. They share information, and they started looking at using supercritical CO2, and I'll explain the terms in a minute, to replace some of the rather nasty chemicals they were using in extraction, chlorinated hydrocarbons and fluorocarbons.
Nice.
They also found that CO2 extraction was a much more energy efficient method of extracting compared to, say, steam distillation, because CO2 only requires pumping, and it's much more conservative. It's green chemistry, so it doesn't pollute the environment, which was a big plus. Back in the 70s, we were looking at the ozone layer and being destroyed by the various fluorocarbons, and so industry was looking for ways to improve. They're also looking at ways to get rid of hydrocarbons out of extraction. So oleoresins and absolutes are made with hydrocarbons, which you do get carry across into the main product. So CO2 had a lot of benefits.
Nice.
Now let's get into the science and the physics of it. So this is a phase diagram. Don't get tripped out about it. Basically, matter exists in three phases of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. That's on planet Earth. In the cores of stars, we also have plasma. But if you take various molecules like CO2 and water, you can take them to their triple point, which is the point I've shown it here on the diagram with a little star. This is the point where the solid, the liquid, and the gas phase are all in equilibrium. So you may have ice, you may have water, and you may have steam all at the same time. And it's a particular temperature and pressure that does that. Well, if you move up the phase curve on these boundaries between liquid and gas, we reach the supercritical point. Now, at the supercritical point, the difference between a liquid and a gas disappears, and you end up with this thing called a supercritical fluid. The point about supercritical fluids are that they have the permeability of a gas, they have the solvent carrying capacity of a liquid, but they don't have the surface tension of, say, water as a solvent. So they're really, really efficient at stripping out things as an extraction solvent. So supercritical water is a big thing these days in the nutraceutical market, but supercritical CO2 has been used, as I said, since the 70s as an extraction solvent for a variety of other industries as well, which we'll get to in a minute. It's a really great solvent because all you do is you reduce the pressure slightly, reduce the temperature slightly, and the supercritical fluid drops back to being a liquid, drops back to being a gas. And so whatever you've extracted, if it's aromatic or non-aromatic, it's left after the gas is removed. So there's no contamination. And that's really, really important when we're looking at some of the things that we're playing with.
Nice.
The technology, most of you have probably experienced things that are made with supercritical technology. Decaffeinated tea and coffee are a great example of products in the marketplace. De-alkalized wines and beers using this, stripping fat from meats or fried foods. And then you've got new technology that's been rolled out. Dry cleaning is now, CO2 dry cleaning is very, very common. Replaced a lot of really terrible hydrocarbon solvents, toluene and benzene and stuff like that. Also being used in impregnation and dyeing, nano and micro particulate formation. We've also got supercritical fluid chromatography, which I'll mention in a minute, and even refrigeration. So there's some really broad-ranging topics that CO2 or supercritical technology is being used for. That phase diagram again, a little bit different. This one's specifically about CO2. So the supercritical point for CO2 is 73 bar, which is roughly 74 atmospheres. So 74 times the pressure you're sitting in at the moment, and at 31 degrees Celsius. And because I'm talking to Canadians, you actually understand what Celsius is.
Yes.
Which is a useful thing. So that's a warm day in summer for us, or for me anyway, in Australia. Yeah. So when we're looking at the different types of CO2 extracts, and you'll often see subcritical or liquid extracts, select CO2 extracts, and total CO2 extracts. Now, they all have to do with different temperatures and pressures. And this is where CO2 extraction is so different from, say, steam distillation or solvent extraction. So with steam distillation, you heat up water, it boils at normal atmospheric pressure. And that water, by using Dalton's law of partial pressures, second law of thermodynamics, can cause other liquids to vaporize at the temperature of boiling water. So Hydrocarbons like, say, limonene in oranges that has a boiling point up in the many hundreds of degrees Celsius can be made to vaporize in this system. So that's how steam distillation works. The thing is that steam distillation only has a very narrow window of about carbon 5 to roughly carbon 15, depending on what you're doing. So that's where we get our essential oils. When we look at absolutes or oleoresins, we use hydrocarbon or hydrofluorocarbon solvents. And again, we get this range of extract. Now, it's a much broader range. It's like carbon 5 to about carbon 40 or 50. But we can't control what we're extracting. It's a one-shot go and you get the whole lot. You get this murky sludge that you've then got to clean up. When we're looking at CO2, we have temperature, pressure, co-solvency, so we can change polarity, and extraction time. So we've got 4 parameters that we can change to tune the CO2 extraction. So if we're using lower pressure, a lower temperature, we're in the liquid phase or the subcritical phase. And this extracts stuff that's pretty much very similar to essential oils. When we move up to the supercritical point, we get a slightly bigger range of extracts. And if we add a co-solvent, such as ethanol, we can change the polarity of the extraction medium and remove more polar compounds. If we crank the temperature and pressure up slightly more, we move into the higher supercritical range. And this is where we start to extract bigger and bigger and bigger molecules. Now, the beauty of this system is that you can tune it. You can do a run, and let's use, say, cannabis as an example, because that's the big topic these days.
It is.
You can take cannabis flowers, so nicely dried cannabis or hemp flowers. You can grind them up, put them in the CO2 extraction rig. You can run them at a subcritical pressure and temperature, and you can extract all of the volatiles, or as they love to say in the cannabis world, the terpenes. Right? And so you strip out all the terpenes. And then what you do is you increase the temperature and pressure and you move into the supercritical phase. And at that point, you start to take out the cannabinoids, which are about carbon 21 compounds. They're phenol terpenoids. So if you just turn it up maximum pressure and run it, you'll get this green, murky sludge, a bit like the calendula total extract in the bottom of the slide. Where you're getting, you get all the plant waxes, you get all the chlorophyll being extracted, and you don't want that in cannabis extracts. You want a nice clear liqueur. So what they often do is they take that total extract and then they run it through a short path still with ethanol, and they do a very similar processing to what we do with absolutes and oleoresins to clean them up, to strip out the waxes, to strip out the color. Well, you can actually tune a CO2 rig so it doesn't take that stuff out in the first place. So they used to use CO2 rigs back in the start of the cannabis revolution in America, particularly in Canada, as this shotgun approach of let's take everything out and then we'll work backwards. These days, a lot of people are going, no, what we need to do is be a bit more refined and only take what we want. And so by varying those 4 parameters that I mentioned of temperature, pressure, co-solvency and time, you can tune your extract. You can also tune your extraction pathway. It's a different way of doing it, where some of the companies now are running multiple separation flasks on their extractors, and they vary the extraction output pressure and temperature so they can selectively separate out the componentry. It's really cool, but it's very complex in thermodynamics and phase diagrams and energy mass equations and stuff. I've tried to read some of it and gone, nah, not for me. I'll just do it by hand. So yeah, so I've got the molecular sizes on here and the various pressures as well, just to give you a bit of an idea of the different ranges. But when someone says this is a select CO2 extract, what they mean is it's just moved into the supercritical phase, and or they've selected a particular temperature and pressure to pull out the components of what they want in the extract. A total CO2 extract is a more combined one, which has the volatiles plus some of the non-volatiles. And I'll show you some examples of that later in this lecture. So one of the big things about CO2 extraction is that it doesn't denature or chemically alter constituents like you get with steam distillation. The best example of that I'll get to shortly when I talk about German chamomile is azulene, is the blue oils. All your blue oils, yarrow, blue tansy, German chamomile, blue cypress, rosewood, it's a new Australian rosewood that's blue as well. They all contain azulenes. And these are artifact chemistry that has been produced during the steam extraction process. So when people say to you that essential oils are pure and natural, no, they're not. They're man-made and they have artifacts. They have chemical differences. And lecture, and I've got a couple of classes I'm going to plug. Next year, I'm going to be coming back to North America, and I'll certainly be coming to Canada as well. And if Nikki and Rachel want to host me, I may even run some classes up in Toronto.
Ooh.
But I'll be doing my aromatic cuisine food as medicine class, which is a learn how to cook and make delicious beverages and foods using extracted aromatics safely and properly. So I'll be teaching that. I also will be teaching an advanced formulation class I've called the ABCs of formulating aromatics, botanicals, and cannabinoids, where I'll be looking at therapeutic uses and dosing levels for both topical and internal across the board using essential oils, absolutes, CO2s, the whole gamut, including cannabinoids. So again, hemp and cannabis have become very common now. You've got federally approved use in Canada. Various parts of America, it's different. Here in Australia, we're at medicinal cannabis by script only. But I've found cannabinoids working with some of the botanical CO2 extracts with our normal aromatics. You can get massive expansion in therapeutic uses. And one example is pain relief, topical pain relief, where I find aromatics on their own, you'll get, 3 to 6, maybe 12 hours. You add cannabinoids to it, it goes out to 24 plus hours in pain relief and reduction in inflammation. So this is an exciting area that isn't well covered. I've been working in this field now for quite a few years. A lot of my trips to America and Canada, when I've been over there teaching classes and doing conferences, I've also been doing covert formulating work off. I'll disappear. You won't see me on social media for days, and that's because I'm in a lab somewhere or I'm in a grow or whatever looking at stuff. I remember when I was in Toronto last, I ended up at a grow in an underground facility that were growing medicinal cannabis with aquaculture. So that was kind of cool to be able to see that while I was there.
Absolutely amazing. And CO2s aren't talked about or shared enough.
Look, I love what I do. And I love to share and impassion people and tease people with these delicious things. So hence why the cooking class, the aromatic cuisine is, I started teaching that back in 2004, students in Sydney when I was there. And then I stopped teaching in 2014 because I didn't have the book written. I didn't have the range ready. So there will be a new book, Aromatic Cuisine Food as Medicine. I'm working on it at the moment. I've decided to shelve Bush Sense version 2 just for now because other people have. There'll be a new one. Don't worry, I just haven't got there. The problem with books, Nikki, is they don't make you money and they take a lot of time. And I know. And I'd much rather put time into teaching, and I do a lot of formulating at the moment. And it's more fun, right? Like it's what I enjoy. So
one thing that we're just take a couple minutes to touch upon is, as someone who's been in the aromatherapy world for so long, what would you say are some of the top ways to work in the aromatherapy world? Because this is something we often have questions about, is like, what can I do as an aromatherapist? Like, how can I do this?
Okay. So, and I used to get these questions when I was teaching in Sydney at one of the big colleges too, because, a lot of the colleges are great at getting people on board to do their courses, but then they don't really equip them. Aromatherapy it can be an industry in itself, or it can be a passion in itself. But I find aromatherapy, like many of our complementary therapies, works really well with other modalities. So I love aromatics in massage, whether it's lymphatic or relaxation or therapeutic, like topical work. A lot of the work I do is in topical pain relief, analgesia, stimulation and the like. Another area is the neuroendocrine and the cognitive side of the aromatic world. So working with counselors, working with psychologists, dealing with trauma, another huge area. Helping people unscramble their brains and work through their issues is another big area in the aromatic world. So you can be an aromatherapist with being a counselor. It's a perfect match because you can come up with blends to help unlock people's consciousness and help them move through things. You mentioned about Reiki before. Yes, I'm a shaman, Reiki master, scientist. So I walk those different worlds at different times. Look at my Tibetan bowls sitting on the shelf there. And I used to do sound therapy work where I would put bowls on people and do sound tuning to tune their chakras, but I'd also use aromatics to do that. They're brilliant for space clearing. There's nothing better than smudging a house with frankincense CO2 or frankincense resin. Give up sage, it's too toxic, but frankincense is amazing. Some of the other woods are amazing. So where does aromatherapy fit in? Aromatherapy fits into the massage sector. It fits into cosmetic manufacturing. It fits into herbal medicine. It fits into counseling. It fits into holistic wellness. Product. You can end up doing product ranges. Like I've got therapists that I know that make candles, they make body butters, they make roll-ons, and they make a really good living from making stuff like that and selling it in the bulk phase. You don't have to get into really high-end cosmetics to make money from these things. And the reason that I don't use the term aromatherapy so much anymore, I use the term aromatic therapies to differentiate. And in that aromatic therapies umbrella, I also include food and beverage flavoring work, the use of aromatics in that area. So using them as therapeutic agents in nutraceuticals, things like aromatic honeys. One of my favorite dosing methods for kids and for the elderly is to take some really good high-grade honey, add some aromatics to it, mix it in. Yes, that's aromatic medicine, but you're working at a food flavoring level that still is therapeutic. Yes. So you can get around the regulatory side of things by making it a food. These two drinks that I have here that I showed you before, the turmeric elixir and the energy chai. These are delicious medicines. They have therapeutic properties, but delicious flavor. So, there are ways of reframing what you do. And that's why my view of the aromatic world is so much more broader, because I'm not looking at it just in this little one area. Perfumery is another big area that people can get into, making personal perfumes, and you can layer that with what other modalities. The 5-element model, the Chinese TCM model, which Gabriel Moget's done with his system. You can look at using it, and Peter Holmes, sorry, I just have to check his book. Yeah, Peter's been doing this for decades, using aromatics in that modality model. I know acupuncturists that use essential oils in their practices. They fit into so many other healing modalities. And then when you introduce them to doctors and nurses, so big areas in aromatherapy in Australia where clinical aromatherapists work are in aged care, neonatal. So, taking someone who wants to be pregnant, helping them to get pregnant using aromatics to improve their holistic space, getting them through all the nasties of pregnancy, doing their delivery aromatically. Like a couple of my kids were born that way, using aromatics and no other pain management along the way. And then the treatment of children, they're very young. Aromatics fit in so well for that. and then the elderly at the other end of life where they're needing cognitive support, they're needing physical support, dealing with wound care aromatic wound care leaves everything else behind. There is no better way of treating diabetic ulcers and the like, skin infections, skin conditions. So, I know herbalists that make money out of sinusitis. So, you could set yourself up as an aromatic specialist that made blends to treat respiratory illnesses.
Yeah.
And you sell them online. There's a model that works. You specialize in a certain area of treatment and you make the medicines and you sell the medicines accordingly.
Yeah. Finding that niche is so important.
The niche is really important. And that's why when I teach, I use this much broader model to look at and say, well, if you want to do relaxation, Michelin RCA massage, or you just want to take Swedish massage and add aromatics to it, it's the same. The Michelin RCA technique was a cobbled together thing of different bits and pieces to make this uniquely different aromatic massage. I've always used aromatics in massage when I've been a practitioner. Sciatic relief, for instance, you can spend half an hour trying to release someone's glutes to get to their sciatic pain, or you can put a couple of drops of kunzia oil, this plant here, on the sciatic, rub it in, leave it for 2 minutes, do all your releases, done, move on. I'm a lazy massage therapist. I like to work smarter, not harder. So that's a big area as well. I'm spending a lot of time in the gym, and I've found a lot of people there that have got sprains, strains, tears. One of the teachers, she tore her calf, and I made up some aromatic pain relief for her. I gave her a topical for that, and she was gobsmacked that she recovered 3 weeks quicker. The physio was like, "You're already better. What did you do?" And it was just by using aromatics to help reduce the inflammation, to help improve the pain management so she could do the necessary stretches, but also it stimulated the metabolism locally to move things out and improve tissue healing. Absolutely. So, I see lots and lots of opportunities, and it's really, I've even used CO2 extracts and essential oils to flavor kombuchas.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, so I used to make kombucha because I'm a tea nut, as you can see with my tea bowls.
Yes.
But I've done kombucha with matcha. I've also done kombucha with sencha green teas, and that gives you a much lighter liqueur. And then I've done secondary ferments to flavor them. So I put lemon myrtle into kombucha, and it is gorgeous as a drink, and make a concentrate kombucha that can then be diluted in soda water. So, the flavoring potential is huge. We don't normally look at food flavoring or beverage flavoring in the aromatic world, in the the aromatherapy world.
Yeah. But
it's there. It's part of it. Everything you eat and drink that has flavor is essential oils or aromatics in one form or another. There's a much bigger range of aromatics available today. People shouldn't be frightened. Like the folded citrus, for instance, are amazing. The deterpenated citrus, some of the deterpenated oils. When you look at Gatafos, when you look at his text, which I'm reaching up to here to pull it out of the shelf.
It's nice that they're all there at your fingertips.
They are. So Rene Gatafos was a perfumery chemist. Okay, that's where he came from. And if I find the chapter, I want to just show you this because this is hilarious. Anyway, I'm not going to wait, but you can look it up. He has a whole chapter on deterpenated essential oils.
Oh, nice.
He raved about them being more therapeutic than extracted oils because they had all these other terpenes in there which were toxic and difficult to work with. Because he was talking about internal medicines, and terpenes are often irritating to the digestive system. And so by removing them, you actually get a more appropriate internal dosing method. Under the British Pharmacopoeia and European Pharmacopoeia standards for essential oils, topped and tailed essential oils that have had the terpenes stripped, had the sesquiterpenes removed, are still essential oils. So, if someone says to you, "Oh, you can't use a folded citrus oil, or you can't use a deterpenated peppermint oil because they're not real essential oils," they are. There's too much of this nonsensical touchy-feeliness about aromatherapy in a lot of places where they go, they're speaking from a lack of knowledge and science, and it drives me crazy sometimes. But
Awesome.
They're all there. They all have uses. So has that sort of answered that question? I think
yes,
there's a lot of options.
more than enough. There's so much. And then the last question is, and this is something that we always ask everyone, is what is your favorite aroma or oil?
Oh, I'll answer that with a simple statement. I am Western Australian sandalwood.
Okay. I wasn't sure what you were going to go with. I wasn't sure if maybe a Kunzi or sandalwood. Nice.
Look at sandalwood. Look at sandalwood. Look at Australian sandalwood. Look at its chemistry. Look at its spiritual, psychological, physical properties. Absolutely. It's way more complicated than the Indian sandalwood. Mm-hmm. The climate the temperature ranges that it grows under, from -5 degrees Celsius to +60 degrees Celsius, right? It's tenacious, it's grounding, it's spiritual, it's base chakra to crown chakra aligned. I am sandalwood.
Nice. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for all this information. You are always such a wealth of knowledge. We appreciate your time. And thank you to everyone for tuning in to Vetiver Vibes, the Essential Oil Scoop. I'm Nikki Fraser here with Mark Webb, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
See you later.
This episode was brought to you by Essentria, a leading online aromatherapy school. You can join the free Introduction to Essential Oil course at www.schoolofessentria.com.
If you love this episode or you got a lot of value out of it, please make sure you share it with someone in your community who you think will enjoy it too. If you haven't already subscribed or reviewed the show yet, please go over to your preferred streaming platform and hit subscribe, then leave a review. This is the best way to help support us, and we appreciate it. Email us with a screenshot of your review, and you will be entered into our monthly draw for a free mini course.
This podcast is for information purposes only. We are certified clinical aromatherapists and holistic health professionals. If you have a medication concern, please refer to your health team. Everyone's health is unique to themselves, so the topics and suggestions stated may or may not apply to you directly.